Hello everybody and welcome to episode 187 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Here we go.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you got a health issue that just won't go away no matter what you try? Then welcome to the Revive Yourself podcast, where we reveal the secrets to long-lasting health by getting to the root cause of problems that no one else is talking about. So you can have more energy, clear skin, healthier hair, a leaner physique, more confidence, and most importantly, do the things you love and live the life you deserve. Here's your host, Ryan Martin.
So people, welcome back to the show, episode 187. This time with a new guest, Doreya Ibrahim, and she is part of Biogeomtry.ca, the daughter of Dr. Karim and Dr. Karim Ibrahim, and what we'll be talking about today is going to be fascinating, talking all about biogeometry and how it can help with mitigating, in fact harmonizing any harmful frequencies and the other benefits to what the symbols can do, how it can help with your home, how it can help protect your body, everything really. It's going to be a really fascinating conversation for you to listen to. Before we get into that, as always, this episode is sponsored by www.reviveyourself.co, where you can go over to the website, click on the shop, and you'll get exposed to the best products in the natural health world, bar none. If you head on over to Ancient Purity, right now in winter, I'd recommend the vitamin C and vitamin D, as well as the fulvic minerals. They're going to be fantastic for keeping your immune system stimulated. Then you can head on over to the Finchley Clinic. I'd recommend getting the cat's claw, quadrupedra and paldico teas. Once again, they're great for fighting any bacteria, parasites, but also keeping your gut nice and healthy, keeping your liver healthy, and stimulating the immune system once again. And then always the great option is to head into Biooptimizers to get the best probiotics on the planet, bar none. They're P3OM, like the Navy SEALs or the SAS of the probiotic world. I'd suggest you getting them, as well as anyone who's got any sort of digestive issues. The HCl or the mass enzymes are phenomenal. So that's what I'd be recommending right now into the winter months. Always a good greens drink's always fantastic, and making sure you guys are getting your saturated fats in around winter. Remember, plants don't grow in ice, so if you're in a cold country, making sure you're getting the right amount of calories to feed your body during these cold months. With that being said, we're going to get onto the show with Doreya. She's absolutely fantastic. I know you'll enjoy it, so enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. So, after quite a bit of back and forth, finally managed to get you on. This is a conversation I really wanted to have for a long time, since I heard your dad, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, speaking to Paul Check on Paul's podcast. Had some very good, long, in-depth conversations with Paul, myself, and when I come across that conversation, it was something that it was almost having dived into the world of technologies that can help us mitigate different energies, EMFs, etc. This was coming from it's coming from a different perspective, which I really want to get into, which is fantastic. But thank you for coming on. And Egypt.
Yes, from Egypt.
And that's where because I know the website's got a few different websites for North America. Is that generally where you're based, Egypt?
We're back and forth. So I just moved here right pre-pandemic from Vancouver Island. And our headquarters though in Canada are in Montreal. And then we also have a company in Switzerland as well.
Yep, Switzerland, that's where I've been getting, because I'm going to get into it as well. A lot of, unfortunately, I think your stock is in such high demand that there's not enough of it at the moment. So trying to get it everywhere, and
I can help you with that for sure. I mean, what we've been doing lately, just because, yes, I mean we're still a small company, so we're doing our best to meet manufacturing demands. But a lot of times what we do is we do have a lot of retailers. And so if you just message us, I can find out the nearest retailer who just got an order.
Perfect. Yeah, I know you've got a couple in the UK. You've got quite a few all over the place, and so it shouldn't be a problem. I think it's just that your popularity is probably just skyrocketed, and people going, "Oh, I want some of this," and which after this conversation, I think you'll have even more people wanting your products and even your information, because you do courses as well, which we'll get into. So, for people out there, Doreya, people that are new to biogeometry, what is biogeometry? Because I want to give people a bit of a dummies guide today, because we've got because it can get quite technical and it can get quite deep. So, and you're smiling, so if you're listening.
No, I always what we do the courses, and I always tell the students that it would be so interesting for me after the courses were 6 days live, but now it's 3 weeks online. I always tell them it would be so interesting for me to hear how you explain to your families and your friends what it is that you're studying, because it's not even a slightly different perspective. It's a massively different perspective, I find, for most people. So that's why you see me kind of smiling, because I always think it's actually the biggest challenge. So biogeometry is a science that deals with energy of shape. And if we just go back to the origins of biogeometry, I always feel like this is the best way to explain biogeometry, both to people who don't have a background in different, maybe subtle energy or vibrational approaches to the environment and the body, and for those who do. So going back, so you mentioned my father, Dr. Ibrahim Karim. So my father and my grandfather, they're architects, and they had an architecture firm, or they have an architecture firm. And my father was working on renovation that has to do with ancient, different types of ancient Egyptian technologies, a museum that would showcase that. So he became interested in different types of ancient Egyptian medicine. And of course, if we look at the pyramids and different aspects of that. So to bring a long story short, he was guided to a set of researches that were done by primarily French scientists that we call French radiesthesia. And they deal very much with this concept of what they call shape-caused waves. Now, as part of that, of course, they looked at things like the pyramids and hieroglyphics, but it's this concept, really for most people, this concept of shape as a form of subtle energy and how that can affect us, I think is new for everybody. A lot of people consider, people in the wellness community might have heard of things such as sound healing, maybe some types of color therapy. Now, if we look at shape as being one of those, it's not as common to have been heard of, but you can see how it logically also fits in being one of our sensory experiences. So biogeometry, it's a science that deals with the subtle energy of shape and how that affects us. It's a design language. And to tie it into other subtle energies, when we look at one example that we often give is if you look at, for example, a prism, and we have light going through a prism, it refracts into different angles, and we see different color qualities. So we see angle as a component as well of color qualities. So we look at shape, color, smell, touch, taste, all of our sensory experiences as qualities that form our sensory experiences, that form our environments. And when we can begin now to understand shape as a part of those qualities, it opens into this whole door of biogeometry. Now, as part of biogeometry, just like any other subtle energy system, there were shapes that were harmful and shapes that were beneficial. And so as part of this science, when my father received a lot of this work, there was this handing down of there's still some missing pieces here that need to be figured out. And the key to those missing pieces was actually sacred power spots. So being an architect, and that's why I think being an architect is very important here, because being an architect, my father understood through the history of architecture that the energy related to a lot of sacred sites. So at that time in that research, they spoke very much of the energy related to people who you would consider to be spiritual, or a better way to say it, connected. they would have a lot of a specific type of energy quality. But my father started to look at that now in terms of locations. And this was important as an architect because there was this concept now of what we call the centering energy quality, where locations, sacred power spots to be exact, that have been, central to cultures since the dawn of humanity, they have this energy quality that can be beneficial and that has this healing communication property to it, no matter what energy state your body is in. So that was the key. So if you think of healing places in the world or sacred sites or areas of pilgrimage, you can go and benefit from these energies, and there's no dosage. And there's also what we say, no directionality to it. So it doesn't matter. It's not polarity based. Doesn't matter if you have an over functioning or under functioning. And we also find it in the body as well through certain types of practices.
It rebalances.
Yes. So rebalances is the perfect word. Rebalances, harmonizes, centers. So the key to biogeometry was, well, how do we access this energy quality? How do we recreate it? How do we get a design language out of it? And so I think that's the basics of where to start. And a big part of it as well, you just mentioned EMFs and geopathic stress. I think a big part of biogeometry too was just approaching it from, when we go through biogeometry, or even the way that we teach it, it's really going through a type of beginner's mind in this approach, because we understand that if we try to look at the environment the way ancient man looked at the environment, we can't see it the same way. So we spend a lot of time as well talking about how you can even consider ancient man to be a type of different species, and how much their perception was very much a right brain type of perception. So instead of doing it that way, we actually try to understand the energy principles of shape, of subtle energy, and specifically the energy principles of the centering energy quality, because we find that it was central to their culture. We find that it was central both in design principles, in different locations. And so by trying to just understand it, we can go back and study ancient monuments or ancient practices from our perception and understand them. But more importantly also is that we can bring in these principles to address the types of stress we're facing today, like electromagnetic fields, like what we call geopathic stress, which some listeners might not be aware of, but it just refers to certain underground, what we say, lines or energy crossings that can be both beneficial and harmful for the body.
Yeah, geopathical stress is something that I come across about 11, 12 years ago. I had a geopathical fault line running through my house and I had to get it doused, which is another sort of area that most people might not be familiar with. But put it this way, the royal family won't go anywhere without having their estates, looked at, doused, etc. for geopathical fault lines, geopathical stress. These are yeah, exactly. These are once again, these are energies that have been known for a while, but have sort of been hidden to us. And lots of these things are because as I know that you guys are into, if you see what's going on in the world right now, it's with a sinister undertone to it, and a lot of things are hidden from us, especially when it comes to certain things. Like you mentioned the shape of buildings, right? And so, which we want to get into as well. And so many questions, Doreya, so many questions. We could go with so many different ways with this. So I just want to go, because we mentioned the shape of buildings, because there's no surprise, it's not I should say the way that pyramids have been built, the way that churches have been built, they're built in specific ways. Because you mentioned about how shape of buildings can be an issue, and I've heard you speak before of when the Indians were Red Indians, or the native indigenous people were brought into America and they were trying to be put into Western world. They were saying, well, all your buildings are square, they're going to make us ill. That's why they have teepees, right? And so churches, for example, have a dome, have a triangular roof. So do pyramids. So, was that just by chance, or was that designed in a way that could help people?
So when we look at shapes in general, so specifically domes and pyramid shapes, those are types of shapes that we call emitters. They will amplify energy qualities. And actually, anybody here who is, I think that most people who start looking at energy of shape automatically go to pyramids, and then you'll find people meditating under pyramid shapes, and you'll find different types of crystals and things in pyramid shapes. Now, people have to be careful of that, because when we explain things as being an energy amplification, and we look at churches and we look at the pyramids and we look at everything you just mentioned, the first question now we need to ask is, what are they amplifying?
Right.
And so when we go to, for example, the Giza Plateau, there's a power spot there. And so there's an amplification between the naturally occurring power spot in the ground. We're amplifying that energy quality. And it also becomes a location then to communicate with all of the, if you want to think of them as divine laws or divine proportions that exist in the universe. And so the location itself has this energy within it that you can then interact and resonate with. And so that's why the pyramid shape becomes ideal there. It's the same thing for a lot of church architecture. When we are dealing with, you'll normally find a dome, church architecture, mosque architecture. We've seen the same thing across temples architecture. You will find that there's certain locations where you find these shapes, and those become the locations where you want to amplify the most energy. So it actually has to do with that. But if you're using these shapes, you have to be aware of how they're amplifying energy so that you can test what it is that you're amplifying. And so that's one aspect there.
So it's not amplifying negative energy rather than positive. You mean you have to want to find out what energy is actually moving through that specific power spot. So these sacred power spots that I want to get into is at different locations around the world. And so your father being an architect, I mean, that it's sort of like everything come together quite nicely, because sometimes you need to have the knowledge from different areas to put it all together. Otherwise, you don't know what's going on, or you can have the knowledge but not know how to implement it, which was the key. So with these sacred power spots, I mean, one, how did people find? Like, how did they originally find them? What was it that gave them away? And two, I mean, are these power spots, cities are built on them? Like where would we find them generally?
I mean, if you go to town planning and you look at cities like Washington, Rome, Cairo, those all take into account different types of sacred energies into their planning. Now, also how they would find them. Now, this a little bit goes back into that right brain perception versus the left brain perception. Okay, so there might be, for all we know, there was, or not for all we know, chances are there was probably a heightened sensitivity to environmental energies.
Just for people out there, before we get into that, right brain versus left brain, for people out there, right brain creativity, left brain logic. We're in a world today where if like it can't be measured or weighed, people think it doesn't exist. So people out there always say that, okay, do you think love exists? Yeah, we'll try and measure it or weigh it. So this is just to get people, if most of my listeners will understand that, but for new listeners out there, the difference between left and right brain. So sorry, Dora,
and it goes back to, I mean, and it's good to bring me back, because a lot of times I'll be going with explanations that we'll be giving in classes, and I'll just go off on a tangent. So to go back, so if we look at, for example, Carl Jung, he explained the perception moving from right brain perception, the seat of perception moving from right brain perception to the type of left brain perception. And if we go back to other types of works that we refer to, there's Hans Kaiser, who's the father of universal harmonics or revived universal harmonics, I should say that. He also explains in his text how this concept of, when we look at these sensory experiences again, so if we look at sound as an energy, or number as an energy, or angle as an energy, sound as an energy, I feel like most people can relate to, but color as an energy, number as an energy, angle as an energy. These are concepts that are foreign to us now, but he explains that within the right brain perception, this would have been, in ancient man, this would have been the natural mode of perception. So if you think about it, if I make a sound, the energy of the sound would be a form of energy perception that I can relate to that came before meaning. Same thing now for numbers. Numbers would be a number quality. They have an aspect, a healing aspect to them, or it doesn't have to be a healing. They have a quality aspect to them versus just being used for mathematical accounting purposes.
Adding. So this is why like numerology and gematria and all these things sort of play a part, because they all have energies in them, which, it's just, and so it makes sense why in a spiritual world, they talk about Jesus Christ light, or even just the word Jesus Christ gets rid of dark entities or bad entities, because probably has energy to do with just saying those words, those letters.
Yes, there could be energy. Exactly. So certain words have specific energy qualities to them. And so the question now of, when we look at ancient man, they had an affinity to just the environment and observing the environment that we don't have today. Now, one of the ways that you can actually find a power spot is by just observing animal behavior. So you'll find certain animals will go to specific spots. And if you actually go back into history, you can find these amazing stories of how certain locations were chosen. And they're really neat. And it's I always say that there's certain books that I just wish people would write. And this is one of them, all of the stories behind these power spots. So one of the power spots that is just very close to our heart, and I just came back from Switzerland, is in Zurich in Switzerland. You have the Grossmünster Church. And so you had the two missionaries, Felix and Regula. So my father always likes to point out that the patron saints of Zurich are Egyptian. But the story goes is that they were beheaded at the foot of the riverbed. And when they were beheaded, they carried their heads and they ran up the hill and they fell at this spot where we find Grossmünster Church today. And then the story continues that Charles the Great was hunting a stag. And that stag, he was hunting across Europe, and it came to the location of this spot and it just stood. And his horses also just stood. And so that was the location that they then chose to build that church, the Grossmünster Church. And then there was another one. I remember in Scotland, the way that they chose that location was and I could be off in some of these because I'm repeating these from this one, especially somebody told me the story, but it's actually written in the building itself, in the castle itself. So it had to do with filling up, I think it was a donkey carriage or a horse carriage with gold, and then letting it wander. And the place where it stops is where they chose to build that castle. And you can see this huge, beautiful tree in the location where it stopped, and the castle is built around it. In Egypt, the citadel is said to have been built that they actually took meat and hung it around different areas of Cairo, and to see where it stayed freshest the longest. Mm. And then they would choose that location. So there was a lot of observation. Now, of course, there could be a lot of different methodologies today of testing soil and of doing different things to find these locations. But observation was a big part of it. Circling doves, for example, is another aspect as well that we find in power spots. So there's a lot. So you have observation, you have some kind of testing. Like I said, they would look at the rate of fermentation of milk and meat, and also the places to avoid were also chosen with observation. So there was locations that people would say, okay, so these locations I know, and this is especially people who work in with the land. They would know these places are places to avoid. So we were working in a dairy farm in Quebec, Canada. And when we first went, the farmer had, he showed us where he had his sickest cows and where he had his healthiest cows. So we were explaining biogeometry. And then, he did a little experiment because he wasn't really on board with what we were saying. And so we knew that we tested the area where there was the sickest cow. There was a little bit of geopathic stress there. So we had him. So we just told him, but it was kind of, well, I told you where the sickest cow is. So you're kind of playing me like a little loop here. So then he took his healthiest cow and put it where the sickest cow is and moved that sick cow. And then the healthy cow started getting sick. So that's when he called us, and that's when we went in to see the location and to work with him. Now, that's not, I don't want anybody listening to worry and say, so, it's my house, is this, it's that. Like I mentioned, we checked. So before telling him, we knew that was the cause. There's a lot of causes, of course. The environmental aspect is one of them.
So I think I actually heard your dad. So this is what I want to talk about Switzerland as well in a minute, but it's really interesting what you said there about the location. I mean, for example, birds flying a V, right? And where they land or where they migrate to, would that be like a power spot for them? Yeah, and also if you see these power spots, yeah. So in these power spots as well, would you see like, so for example, in nature, healthier trees, better fruit, more, yeah. So that would all be in power spots.
That's the idea as well. Now, of course, like I mentioned, there's a lot there. I mean, we don't, in terms of, it's just like if somebody's sick, I can't automatically attribute it to the environment. If you have that, I can't automatically attribute it to that. But it is an aspect that we see, and it's actually something that if we're in courses where we have a lot of nature around us, we try to actually just go out and walk and observe. And through the observation, just find places that look healthier, places that look unhealthier. And we can compare the energy measurements of these sites and see what we're getting. And
also how you feel in those areas, right?
You feel, yeah. I mean, that's so one aspect of biogeometry. I think a lot of people, just to circle back, I mean, because you had mentioned dowsing. Mm-hmm. So one aspect, so biogeometry, there's a little bit of a difference from what we call from the traditional form of dowsing, in that in dowsing, you're trying to create a connection with the subconscious. In what we call physical or vibrational radiesthesia, we're actually trying to create a qualitative scale that we can then use calibrated pendulums to assess different energy qualities. It's a little bit different because basically we're not, rather than connecting to the subconscious, we actually have pendulums that each one is a different length, or each one has different angles attributed to it. And so it's holding the different length or a pendulum with a different angle, regardless of its material, will connect us or make us in resonance with a different energy quality. A good example is a musical note, for example. So each one, for example, you can think of being attuned to a musical note. And we talk about this concept once we get into the world of energy and we understand resonance and harmonics. A musical note is in resonance with a color quality, is in resonance with any type of that's a smell, a touch, a taste. So a lot of times, and this is where it goes back to how you feel or different things. So whenever we're working, a lot of people wonder, so how is it that we can verify these types of sciences? And they are verifiable with different types of biofeedback and neurofeedback testing. So this is wherever you're testing the body itself, then you will be seeing the effects of something like biogeometry, versus when we work on, for example, an electromagnetic field, you're not going to find a reduction of the field itself in strength, but you are going to find, when you start checking the effect on the human body, a different qualitative effect. So this is leading to Switzerland, which you just had mentioned in that.
Because I want to talk about that, because you saw differences between what you do in different technologies, but also for people out there, there's Zurich, which we want to get into, or Switzerland, what I want to get into, and a few other places. But you mentioned how the environment impacts us, because for years it was like the genes, and all about there was the whole genetic. What was that? The genetic biome, and which was found out to be nonsense, because they found out epigenetics is what really impacts us. So it's our diet, our lifestyle. It doesn't matter what genes you've got, negative genes you've got. You'll never express them if you don't switch them on. If you don't live in a way that doesn't switch them on. So we can be healthy if we live in the right, our diet's right, our lifestyle's right, but also our environment's right. And something that I think I want you to go into what happened in Switzerland, because it's I remember your dad said like they found that 60% of the issues went away, which showed 60% of these people's issues were actually in regards to the environment. So that's huge for people. So just people out there, if you can expand on what happened and where it was used.
Yeah. I think it's also, just listening as well to the types of symptoms and things. If anybody here just visits our website and they go down to the resources section, it's all the way at the bottom, they can get the report to actually look at those symptoms that you're referring to. But the story behind Switzerland.
What is the website, just for people to see?
Oh, sorry. So it's Biogeomtry.
Yep.
Biogeomtry.com or .ca.
.ca, perfect.
Find that report at the bottom. But to go back now, so the story of Switzerland. So my father graduated from ETH. So that's a technical school in Zurich. So he knew of, he has friends and contacts in Switzerland. So there was a cell tower that was installed in one of the towns there, Hamburg. And people started to complain very much of different health issues. And, they were threatening to blow up the tower if it wasn't removed. There's another aspect there to it, I think, that's important to address, because we've just been talking about power spots and spiritual buildings, no matter what that means to anybody. But for that community, they put the cell tower in the church tower. So that had a whole different type of psychological aspect of people feeling these health effects. And then you're also placing it in the area that's supposed to be the area of
healing and like place you go to pray and heal. It's crazy.
Yeah. So then we went in with the help of with different types of government support, local government support, and the support of Swisscom. They gave us access to the tower locations. So not access to play around with the tower wires or to do anything like that, but just access to the tower itself, where we installed, and I think there's images of this on YouTube or our website, but there's certain shapes that we installed. So you see the antennas right here. So there's certain shapes that we actually installed on the back of the antennas. And by placing that on every antenna, we were able to, and I should also mention, it wasn't just the antennas, there were other aspects of the environment. We also put shapes in specific locations. And then, a week later, there was a press conference and they said, we're fine. We're good. We feel there was, and then going back, a big aspect of it that was very tricky as well is that there was a lot of physical symptoms. So you'll see people started living beneath bunkers. There was a lot of different aspects of electrosensitivity that they were feeling. That was really, I would say, quite extreme to see it in a whole community pronounced in this way. But it was there. And then you can even, if you go on the YouTube, there's even, some of the people who were part of the project saying, I didn't believe in electrosensitivity before. After visiting there, I believe it now. I believe we have a solution. And then there was aspects where they came and said, okay, so other than the physical symptoms, so this was an independent study. And so when the doctor was speaking to them, they said, okay, so other than all these physical symptoms we're giving you, things such as headaches, lack of sleep, back problems, they're all listed on that report, like I mentioned. They came and said, we're having a lot of psychological issues. Okay, we're having a lot of more stress, fighting with my spouse more. I don't have a will to live so much. And so they wanted that aspect as part of the study. And so it was added in there. And the really remarkable thing of that is that it was, you had a sample size of people basically saying, or not a sample, everybody in the study. Okay. So again, this was done in two, this was repeated in another town. So it's 2 towns in Switzerland. So you had 2 different communities who actually came out and said after, in terms of emotional and mental effects, they ended up at the end of the study, if you look at that, saying, I have 0 stress, which, it's very hard to hear that kind of in our modern day, but that's what you see that in the study. And so a lot of times when we're trying to explain the goal of biogeometry to people, we actually show them the before and after graphs of this study. And we say, if you could build a community that's like this versus like this, would you want to do that? And so that's what we're trying to basically say. It doesn't have to be just biogeometry, but this concept of shaping our environment or forming our environment in a way so that it's actually working as part of, if you want to think of it as preventative medicine or well-being or part of our overall health.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with that as well is, I remember when they went to your dad and asked for help, he said, well, you've got these technologies that are causing the issue, and you want me to get technology to allow them to do what they're doing, but to stop the issues being had. He said, like, wouldn't it just be easier to get rid of the technology? And they were like, well, we can't do that. And this is one of the things I've heard. It's like it's like today's world. If you had a child who had a stone in their shoe, the child would take off the shoe, get rid of the stone, and put the shoe back on. But the pain's gone. But we're in a world now where it's like, I've got a stone in my shoe. Instead of taking the shoe off and getting rid of the stone, I'll take some painkillers to try and get rid of it. And it's like, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. But obviously, these people got a lot of money invested. Telecom companies are 5 times more powerful than Big Pharma. And they will tell you that their technology is safe and it's not harmful. And funny enough, they're the ones that do the studies that show it's not harmful. But, it's like the fox watching the hen house. So you come along and done this. And so before that, they were like, oh, just tell us how to do it or tell us how it works. And your dad said, no, I won't tell you how it works. We'll perform it. We'll do what we need to do. And then afterwards, a week later, you can tell me if anything's changed, because he knew that by saying certain things, they probably think it's hocus pocus or a lot of nonsense. But when he actually showed them what the results were, you can't argue with the results. Is that right?
Exactly. And even then, I mean, everybody did argue with the results and the methodology. There was a lot there. But what ended up happening is actually in one of the press conferences, some people came and said placebo effect, some people came and said mass hypnosis, but then one of the women there, she stood up and she said, well, our cows do not speak Arabic. And so my father, when he gave a TED talk in Egypt, it was actually titled, "Why is the Cow Smiling?" And he explained that if it wasn't for the health of the cows, because there was a huge rate of miscarriages once the cell tower was installed that went down. And he explained that if it wasn't for the various ecological kind of rebalancing things that they saw, like they would find bats coming back that had left, and the rate of miscarriages with the cows, if it wasn't for those things, then it would have just been, swept aside. So the TED Talk was called.
It's like the same with homeopathy when people are trying to dismiss it and everything. And you're like, well, it works on babies, and babies, they can't talk to you. They don't know what's going on. So, there's no placebo with a baby. It doesn't know what it's taking. And so it's the same thing there. That's why that's one of the ways, you have to, because people will try and dismiss anything in today's left brain logic, can't measure it. But that's really interesting that so that's one of the things. This is why I want to get into what's different. I want to get into technologies that be harmful for people, because I've covered it. I've covered 5G and that sort of technologies, but this is what makes you different. So whereas I've linked up with companies before that have products that can shield from these frequencies. You can use it on your phone, you can use it in your car, trying to build basically a force field of these things you can do to stop it coming in. That's one way to go about it. But you're still going out into the world with these energies coming. Whereas what you guys do, instead of just protecting yourself, you're changing the whole energetic atmosphere. Correct?
Yes. I mean, what the whole premise, if we go back even to explain different aspects, I always say we're in this little camp because a lot of people are saying exactly what you just said. No, you have to remove the technology. And then you have, no, there's nothing wrong with it. We have the studies industry, like you mentioned. And then there's us, this little sliver in the middle. And so when we look at this aspect of what just to step back now again, just about different ways that we've evolved, there was this aspect where our technology boomed. So our society, our civilization is very much based on technology. Now, one of the things that we're saying is we're not against technology. Okay? So we're not against science. Of course, everybody has, there's different types of things we can critique in different studies and different things. But overall, it's really we look at this concept where if we look at quantity, we say, I'm just going to say quantity and quality right now. So if we look at quantity and quality as being two sides of the same coin, and we look at in ancient times, it was really a qualitative worldview. Then the quantitative caught up and it just kept growing. And the qualitative worldview stayed here. So what a lot of people will approach, they will have the approach of trying to just bring it down. No, we need to come down. We need to move away from this. But this is good. This is still evolution. This is progress. What we want to do is just come in and bring in the qualitative aspect to modern technology.
Yeah.
And so by looking at the human being as an energy system, as a multidimensional energy system, and actually using the aspects of where we work on developing a qualitative subtle energy system that is not prone to autosuggestion, even though we're using the energy of the human body. That's part of the scale when we're using to measure. So using the scale of what we call the physics of quality, we can then assess different subtle energy qualities. And then when we look at now any type of energy, including that of electromagnetic fields, and we look at it qualitatively, and we have a qualitative design language, it opens the door for us to change the effect on the body. So it's exactly like what you said. We change it. We add a harmonizing frequency to it so that we're able to remove the stress off the body. And I think this is important just to add there as well, because you have shielding, and I'm not against shielding. I'm not against shielding. I'm not against if you're able to, close the Wi-Fi at night because it makes you feel better, or don't sleep with your phone next to you when it's not on airplane mode, or different aspects like that. But this is another layer to it.
Yeah.
This is
also, it's a much easier layer than having to walk around trying to put yourself into a bubble the whole time. And it's a way of changing. But the thing is with that, so the energetic, so basically what you're doing is, even though no matter what energy is coming out, you can put symbols and shapes, etc., onto these things, and it changes the frequency? It changes the frequency. Not the frequency. So what does it change?
It changes what we would say the energy quality. So the reason we actually don't use the word frequency,
okay,
it's being used a lot.
Yeah.
But when we understand that different shapes have a different energy effect on the body, then we understand that frequency isn't the right word. Right. Because you can have a wave that's the same frequency, but a different amplitude, which then gives you a different wave shape. So they actually did a study where they showed that the same frequency, but generated with a triangle wave or a square wave instead of a sine wave, can have a different effect on the body.
Interesting.
So frequency is a part of it.
Yep.
And definitely, I think a lot of
like changing. So if I'm putting this, so I've got energy coming through this hole here. If I changed it to a square, or I changed it to a different, whatever it was going to be, a triangle, coming out the other side of it, it would have different properties that would do different things. And
yes, except there's an aspect there because we have to understand that we're not interacting with the electromagnetic wave itself, because we're not shaping the electromagnetic wave itself. But the electromagnetic wave itself has its own set of effects in the environment that are of a compression wave nature. And the shape-caused waves that we refer to are also within this domain. So there is a type of resonance and interaction that occurs between them. And then you can change the effect of that on the body. And then you can check that, the studies we have going from Hamburg to Hirschberg, which we mentioned, we even have, my father being a professor of architecture has students doing their masters and PhDs in this. So they've done different types of researchers where they've shaped, for example, one was shaping different types of cages, I don't want to houses, but they were used with mice. That's why I said cages. And they would look at the different stressful reactions that the mouse would have how much it was willing to explore, how much it was urinating at night, how much all of these different things in the presence of Wi-Fi, and how the effect of the shape of the housing it was placed in, how it affected that. And so there was really good results with that. Same thing with serotonin levels with depressed mice. Same thing with melatonin levels was another study as well. That was conducted by one of our colleagues and also another biogeometry instructor.
It's just interesting because if you can put this technology or this onto where we are right now in the world, I mean, I don't know if it goes against their agenda, trying to get rid of people, probably, but it's the thing, isn't it? It's like, well, we've got this technology that can do this. Oh yeah, but that's not what we're trying to do. But yeah, I get. For us, it's great because we can use it. I mean, no one really knows, but like, you know, with lots of things going on, it seems very, very sinister stuff. This technology is exactly what we need. Like the good guys to bring out things that mean we can live safe in an environment, because we are being bombarded with so many poisons and pollution and EMF. You know, I think it was Dr. McCullough was talking to Dr. McCullough was talking to Ben Greenfield when Dr. McCullough brought out his book EMF. And he asked Ben, he said, this was a couple of years ago, he said, Ben, compared to 100 years ago, how much more exposure in percent do you think we're being exposed to since 1919? And Ben said, I don't know, 400%? He said, higher. He said, I don't know, what, 600%? He said, no, it's 10 times 18, 10 to the 18. So 10 with 18 zeros behind it, percent difference. And so, and people wonder, and he said that this stuff as well doesn't, like, generally, for some people are super sensitive. I've had clients that couldn't be around it, like people in Switzerland, had to move onto a beach in Brighton to get away from it. And we got on some technology that really helped them. But once again, it was shielding them rather than doing what you're doing. And so, but some people like that, most people aren't, and it just affects them slowly. It slowly breaks them down. So, I mean, yeah. I mean,
it's important to one of the things we always address is that it's something that's affecting you, whether or not you're electrosensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, you mentioned clients and moving their environment and everything. There's also some kind of tipping point, right? It's not just the one thing. There's a tipping point. So I've even seen people who have to do types of detoxes in the body to get rid of their electrosensitivity. So one good example is if listeners are familiar with things, even just like chakras or acupuncture points or different types of aspects that are used to assess the body. One important thing now of looking at those is most people will look at those as energy centers that we can look into to begin to understand what's going on with your body, right? So maybe there's something with this meridian, maybe there's something with this chakra. We try to associate it with, well, this is what your symptoms are, so we have to fix this chakra. But instead of now when we understand that if our body is in constant communication with the environment, constant energy exchange, then what we actually have to do is look at why is it reacting that way? And that's because of the energy that we placed it in. That's the environment that we placed it in. I mean, a very non-related aspect of not specifically related to energy. I've seen a lot of people whose health problems go away because they've moved to environments with a better air quality. That has to do with the type of energy exchange. Now, there's a different type of subtle energy exchange as well that we have to take into account. And, we've even worked with children with autism and looked at the different shapes that affect them. And so we found that in our studies trying to develop a classroom shape for children with autism, we've noticed that 90-degree angles can be stressful for them. Now, when we say that, it's important to also add that we found that they were stressful for everybody. They might have been, the reaction to them was maybe more pronounced with the children that we worked with, but the effect itself was more stressful for everybody. So it's the same thing with EMF and geopathic stress.
So it's basically, it's like just because someone's more sensitive or someone's more toxic or someone's got an issue, just because you don't feel it as much doesn't mean it's not having an impact on you. It's just that they feel it more because their body's in a state of stress, higher stress or illness. So that was really interesting because this is one of the other things I was going to say to you, like, because I want to get into cars, I want to get into phones, but Oh, what Switzerland and you said Hamburg was one of the places you used it. You mentioned working with autistic children, and I mean, have you seen this benefit them? Have you seen improvements?
Yeah, so we haven't. What we did is we were working with the Autistic Society in developing, or are working with the Autistic Society in developing. They're developing with the government classroom or like centers with different classrooms, different activities to be available for children with autism, ADD, ADHD, kind of along that whole spectrum. And what we worked with them specifically. It came from the reason I mentioned ADD and ADHD is because that's actually one of the studies that it was a master's or a PhD, I don't know which one, done by a student who was looking at. She worked in a center that works with children that have ADD and ADHD and assesses different symptoms. And she came in with some biogeometry principles and showed the benefit before and after, just small principles of adding certain things in the space. And so from that, we also then worked with the Autistic Society to work on a classroom shape. And the type of effects that we've seen is they would conduct some of their sessions there with the children, and the parents would report that the children were calmer at home, the sessions went more smoothly. So we did see that effect there, and we actually have a model classroom built at our office in Egypt for anyone to come and try out and spend time under and see how they feel that affect themselves.
Awesome. And it makes perfect sense, because if the energy they're working on, living in, is conducive to health rather than it being stressful, because it's just something else that adds to them. It's this invisible stress that people can't see. And so it's why a lot of people, if you're doing a lot of things right, say you're sleeping well, you're taking cold showers, you're doing breath work, you're exercising, you're getting sunlight daily, you're eating well, you probably won't know. You'll mitigate those factors, that stress, a little bit better, because your body's in tune, or it's the energies within itself. It's moving them. As I said before, the energy is passing through nicely. So it's same as fasting. One of the things that they saw with EMF, 5G, and the frequencies come for that, was fasting, obviously, because it allows the body to go into autophagy, so it doesn't stress. But there's certain things like that. So if you're doing all those things, yes, you may get away with it longer, but eventually, these things will, over time. It's like dripping water will eat through stone. So it's really good to have these technologies available to us. Is there anyone else, any other groups of people you've worked with that you've seen having huge benefits with?
I mean, we've seen, we have different, we put research up on our site. We try to focus mostly on the independent research or the masters or different things when we're sharing. But there's certain things that we've seen really good results in, such as asthma, epilepsy. And so those, we have also a Burns biosignature that I've seen do work really well with some people. The first article that came out had to do with platelet counts. So that was the first article that came out in I think it was Reuters or CNN. And then different aspects of the first time we came out in the news as well in New York, and like in North America, had to do with just reducing the stress of. It was in one of the design magazines, and they noticed as soon as they walked in, the editor of Veranda magazine, he said he noticed that his cameraman, who's always stressed, was suddenly calm. And so we hear that a lot. I think it goes back to everything you just added. We're doing all of these things to maximize our health. And I think what we bring in, and also, having studied building biology, to add to everything you mentioned with the breath work, the eating, intermittent fasting, everything that was mentioned here, we just add to, from a building biology perspective, I would just add things like natural building materials, looking at off-gassing, looking at how is your building actually becoming kind of a third layer where it can maybe regulate temperature for you and do these things, and then add the biogeometry aspect, which is the cell energy exchange that your body has. And that has a huge emotional and mental effect on your body. And so then we start looking at different things. So now that you understand the materials, now that you understand exactly how the shape of the building affects you, how the interplay between all of the color, because they're all in resonance. The interplay between everything around you, how it's coming in and affecting you. And now that's where the energy of the sacred power spots comes in. Because at one point when we start dealing, and if people, energy keys is a big word for us, and you find it in a lot of different traditions, such as energy keys, which has to do just with movements of energy in a space. And so a lot of different types of approaches like Feng Shui or Vastu or different things have to deal with that. Now we come in and we explain, once I start talking about your entire kind of sensory world and what you're experiencing and energy moving, the window here, the door, the electricity, it becomes a huge interplay that you go, well, how can we understand the effect of all this? Now that's where the power spots come in as a key. If we can create enough of this energy that we find in a sacred power spot, which is the cornerstone of biogeometry, because some people might be listening here and going, well, how do we create that? So that was actually the research that my father did when he got this French research, which divided different energy qualities into color quality resonances. He began to study sacred power spots to understand the energy there, and then working with colors and angles and shapes. So this is why I mentioned the prism and the resonance of the angle and how we can see shape as energy qualities. So once you have that key and you can recreate that energy quality, it automatically creates this environment where all of these different polarities become centered.
So it's really interesting that we're putting all this together. It's going to make a huge difference to people, and that's why it's an interesting topic for people to get into and even to understand. And this is why we want to do it, because a few things I want to get into around how it helps can help with obviously people, their homes, their cars, etc. But on your courses that you teach, you said 6 days in person or 3 weeks online. So is it what is it mainly you go into? Is it everything?
So we try to, I think the really unique thing about biogeometry is we try to keep it where we can have a class of people from any background. Mm-hmm. We have people who are coming in and they're like, yes, we're coming in, we know all about subtle energy, we work in this field. And then you have other people who are just purely architects. We also have actually tons of IT people, surprisingly, that come in. And this is the aspect, I guess it's the balancing aspect that they want to bring to their work. We have farmers, we have fishermen, we have, the idea now is to bring in, to understand, I would say, the multidimensional aspect in your work. And that's one of the things I think we try to do is we try to teach biogeometry. We try to teach the principles. So how you can measure this energy quality, how you can recreate it if for in your home and family life. But I think a more important aspect to it as well is how can we recreate these environments where we're no longer doing this. A lot of times people right now are going to different types of, I'm going to bring up the right brain again. Right brain activities are needed to relieve stress. Okay. Yep. This can be anything. It can be sports. It can be writing. It can be music. It can be whatever you're drawn to. So now what we're trying to say is imagine a world where this aspect of the multidimensional taking care of yourself, or the self-care of the subtle energy body, isn't something that you do for, meditate for 15 minutes and then go to work, and I understand that in meditation, we're changing our worldview. We're doing all of these different things. But now the idea is, how can we bring in this energy quality into our work and into our daily life? So that we're no longer living as this human being that's caught between, the left and the right, or if you want to use the word science and spirituality. How can we do it where we're not caught in between, or the stress and the de-stress? How can we do it where we're not between these two things, but bring the principles into every aspect of the work that we do? And so that's another layer of biogeometry that we try to teach in our courses. Of course, we also have people who go through the entire training and they become licensed to go and work on people's homes.
Right. So for people, this is the thing as well, isn't it? For people's homes, people's cars, and for people on them, because so we can, because today, we're surrounded by it. They want electric cars, but people don't realize they're sitting in in a city. I'm talking about 6 batteries that are frying them. And because this is the other thing, like technologies, it's heating people, it's dehydrating nature, really. And so, the waves heat the water, that then leads to inflammation in the body. But more than that, it's dehydrating people, and people have 70% water. So it's sort of killing people slowly. It's aging people. It's affecting their brains. It's affecting, everything. So, but they don't realize it. And it's like every day they're getting brain fog. They're like, I said before, they're getting bags under their eyes. They're not feeling as good. They're getting joint pain, whatever it is. So, and we're surrounded by it. And so before, people are in their cars, they have a cell phone on them, in their houses. So this can help mitigate all that, right? So you've got technology that people can use for their phones, for their computers, for their cars.
I think also one aspect you just mentioned, I think where there's a lot of growth in understanding quality of anything really, but understanding energy is actually in the field of water. So I think in the field of water, you're getting a lot of people that are explaining that your water quality matters. And there's actually, and it's not just the chemical aspect or chemical composition there that we're talking about. There's a lot related to water from sacred power spots and water from different locations and the effect that has on, like I said, the whole emotional, mental aspect. So again, not just mineral content and things like that. And so you'll see that. I mean, one person who we worked with was Dr. Emoto as well. And so that's always interesting for.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, because people used to almost feel, I think it was Rupert Sheldrake who showed this, but it's like people always wondered how water could carry so much information, but the water wasn't actually carrying it. It was like it pushed it in the ether, and it could remember. It remembered what it had.
One of the things we had, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's exactly what you came up into my head. We were learning, so working with Dr. Emoto, there's a colleague of ours and his son was running his lab in Liechtenstein. I'm saying that wrong, but he was running it there. And so he was showing us, his father was here showing us just the technology of taking the pictures of the frozen water crystals and how we can look at that. And we actually have a photo where looking through one of the water crystals when we were learning, it actually, one of our own shapes came out in the water.
Really?
Exact shape, like if you looked at it. So yes, there's definitely a communication property there. And yes, when you're talking about the home and the environment, we try to provide. So when the work of Hamburg and Hirschberg came out, there was no solution for people who are electrosensitive unless we went to their communities, which was not possible without government support.
So I was going to say, sorry, do you know Dr. Klinghardt?
I've heard of his work, of course.
Yeah. I mean, he's been talking about this for years. He wouldn't treat people unless they mitigated EMF. He's just like, you're not going to heal. A lot of people go to him. So like when that research came out, it was like saying we need to try and stop it. We need to get, there's also the Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland. Do you know them? I am surprised. You'd love them. Dr. Thomas Rowe, the Paracelsus Clinic. And they do like, if you go there for like 5 to 7 days, you can have like a technology break, but they also do like a detoxification. It's one of the places I went when I was ill when I was younger. You'd love them. Dr. Thomas Rowe. Yeah, he's got like the 3 secret.
Oh yes. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so sorry to cut you off. You're saying that when that research come out from.
No, I mean, I would love it. I just came back from I was at Oasis here in Egypt in the desert, and I was at a hotel with no electricity, and it was really nice. It was great. They also had the beds. The beds were made out of salt blocks, and that's neat also from an energy perspective. But going back to, so after Hamburg and Hirschberg, people were asking, so how can we do this in our communities? I mean, at that time, a lot of people have to remember as well that EMF, talking about EMF, it's become a lot more popular since 5G came out. The reason that I believe got to work with Swisscom was because when we did the work in 2005, people weren't talking about it the way they're talking about it today. And so I think it's that on its own is making it less likely that we end up working with the telecom company letting us near their things. And So we need the government support, local government support, and we need access to the towers. Now, with that, since we can't have that access in a lot of communities today, that's where we have something called the home kit, where we've developed these shapes into just a cube that has these shapes etched onto them, and you can just place them in the home, and it will create a similar effect in the home. And sorry, and you were asking about the courses. That's another aspect to the courses. We go in and show you how to go in and actually check for yourself. So when I'm putting these things on my panel, are they helping? When I'm putting these things, that's what we try to do.
So you've got different things for your phone and your car, so people can drive and their space can be clear. They can listen to their phone and it can be not emitting.
Phone, you have like a sticker like this.
Perfect. So for
body, you have like a ring, pendant. Different.
And you have to clear the energies every day. You put them on your energy, because this is the thing. Because this is the thing. You've got so many different products on your site. It's like, right, for someone like me, it's Christmas because I'll just be like, I have them all. But it's like, I need to know what to do with them, which obviously there's certain, because people out there, but why would I have that one? Why would I have that one? And even with the home, so it's called, I put this down because I wanted to ask you, the One Cube Home Energy Balancing Kit, the One Home Energy Balancing Kit, it still comes with different, so it comes with like a clearing plate, it comes with different symbols, it also comes with a water adjustment.
Yes, it comes with little, I mean, once you get the home kit, you're really going to be in our world, because this is what we call the clearing tray. And it's just symbols that have a type of clearing effect. And then this is where I'm saying, you're going to be in our world, because you're going to get this and be like, how is this clearing anything? And it actually has to do with the shapes that are etched onto here. So one of the shapes that has a big clearing effect is what we call an L90. And it's actually, we have it as a pendant as well. Mm-hmm. Now, where people start, I mean, normally what we recommend is that you start with either the pendant or the ring I have on here, plus an L90 pendant. And then for the home environment, the home kit. So I think you can decide. I mean, if you're basically saying, if it's a family, if you're just getting something for the whole family, maybe start with the home kit. See how it's affecting your sleep. What I do recommend for people to do when they get the home kit is, you're going to get this cube, try placing it in, 3 different locations in the house, and just compare which one you're feeling, how you're feeling with the effects there. Or you have something like the pendant, and which would be more of a personal product. Now the home kit, if somebody gets it and they want to return it, if they go to every retailer has a different return policy. We leave that up to them. But if they go to biogeometryshop.com, you can return it if it doesn't work for you. You have a 2-week return window for the home kit, not the products that we wear.
How would it not work for them?
I think a lot of people tend to gravitate towards the home kit if their sleep is affected or different things. Now, there is an aspect there, and this is where it's hard to say, because some people, you might get it for your sleep. If you're not sleeping well because you're drinking coffee at 6 p.m. or because you're having late night meals or because of different aspects, that might not be the only solution you need. But if you're not sleeping well because of geopathic stress, and the reason a lot of people are affected by geopathic stress is that EMF actually amplifies the effect of geopathic stress. Right. So the more we add EMF devices in our life, in our environment, even just home electricity, by the way, will amplify these lines and their effect. So for most people, they will start, it can be different things: sleeping better, noticing that you're a little bit more calm.
So if someone, because I always turn my Wi-Fi off at night, because there's a whole reason why. We go into this, you got lymphatic system, which cleans the body. You got your lymphatic system, which cleans the brain. And research has shown if you have your Wi-Fi on at night, it stops that brain cleaning effect. But if people still kept the Wi-Fi on at night and they had one of these cubes, would that mitigate the negative effects?
I mean, for everybody who's wanting the definitive answer to this, I always say I think it's best to go to look at the research and look at where we're making these claims from.
Okay.
So from the research that we've seen, sorry?
I trust you.
No, I'm saying from the research that we've seen, because I've said, for example, I've had somebody who is electrosensitive ask me, should I turn my Wi-Fi off at night if I can? And I said, yes.
Yeah.
But then another electrosensitive person in the class told us that they actually having their Wi-Fi balanced using biogeometry helped them with the effects of neighbors' Wi-Fi and external cell tower effects. So there was another layer to it. Now, I personally sleep with my phone on airplane mode, but we do have the Wi-Fi on at night. And through the testing that we've done with biogeometry, yes, I'm not worried about the effects of the Wi-Fi. But then, if somebody's looking for, the idea now is that what we're trying to build in biogeometry is a complete environmental support versus saying it's a complete Wi-Fi protection.
Yep.
We want you to consider not just Wi-Fi. We want you to consider Wi-Fi, water, home electricity, your cell phone. And all of that together, yes, I believe will support a healthy body from the environmental perspective. And I've seen this, just to add, I've seen this in so many ways. Some of the people that come to us is because they've worked with clients again and again and again and again. And they're just not understanding why they're not seeing results. They're seeing results with some clients, but not all the clients. And for most of those clients, the key is understanding the environment.
I mean, you mentioned water there as well, because you've got things that you can add onto your water, right, with it. So you put it into your mains, is that correct? In the tap, and yeah. And so,
so one of the main things is just looking at the house as a system. So we have something that you attach on your electric panel. If you know what you're doing, then you can actually attach it onto the electricity coming into the house, which is even easier. So the pipes where you have the electricity coming in, or just right before the meter or right after the meter, depending on how things are set up. And then we have something for your main, your hot water, your main water, stickers for your router. And then we also give you stickers to place on windows.
So you can your window, but that's the tough one when you're dealing with people that are very house proud. Start putting stickers on your windows.
Just one on each side. 4 stickers total. I'm trying to see if I have one right here. I think it should be probably up there.
So, and this is portable. If I moved, or would you say have one in your house, have one to take away with you? Can you? How big? Oh, it's small. It's really small.
And then you have the shapes. So most people go, you actually have the shapes that are mentioned in Hamburg and Hitchburg. They're etched in here.
I was going to say, it's weird that that's a cube when you mentioned cube is not being the best shape for here.
Well, this is just about what's emitting.
Right.
Is the shapes in here. They look like they're just little notches, but they're actually the shapes that we have buried in different locations in Hitchburg. We actually have them all here.
So, and that's good enough for a 3,000 square foot, you say?
With the whole kit installed. With
the whole kit. So that would be that, things on the water supply, things on the windows. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things I need to have a video of this to see what's.
Well, we do. One of our retailers said exactly what you just said. And you're 100% right. And she was 100% right. So she actually did a video installing the home kit. I want to just say how to find that. If you search Biogeomtry home kit on YouTube and write, her company is called Senses, Senses.
Senses. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that video should show up. I'm checking right now.
Perfect. People will be like, okay, I want to get all this stuff, because you've got quite a lot of other things. You've got an ancient pendant. You've got the L's, also different colors, silver and gold. Do they matter, or is that just for aesthetic?
It matters. So basically, what matters is that if you get a silver pendant, okay, like mine here is silver and it looks really dark. Mm-hmm. It won't look like that when you buy it. I just haven't cleaned it, but I could polish it back.
Yeah. Once
you get the bronze ones, if you can clean them, we recommend cleaning them with something like baking soda and water. And if you can clean them, but you can't, they're not sterling silver, right? So there's going to be some discoloration that happens, but that's okay.
Okay, that's it. So there's no difference in the protection that you get. Okay. And so you've got, and that pendant, the circular pendant, what is that? So your L pendant and the circular pendant, what the difference do they do?
So the L, so basically we mentioned clearing. Mm-hmm. And so we mentioned the clearing tray. And so these products and most energy products, they will have what we call a form of impregnation. They will have lots of energy buildup that you need to just kind of recenter, clear to bring back the product to work properly. And this happens with anything you wear on the body, right? So even your clothes, anything like that, you need to just, at the end of the day, or even a blanket or something, just kind of shake it off. So dust is your most common form of impregnation. So what happens is with your L shape, because it's not on a base, okay, so even if this ends up impregnating, it still works. It doesn't need clearing. Your circular pendant always needs clearing because there's shapes embedded within something.
Right.
And so the L is just nice to wear with the pendant because if this does stop, you still have something helping you out. And for some people feel the effect of the pendant when they wear it, if they're getting it for a specific reason. Again, it's really different with each person because each person is different. And this is a subtle energy support for all the organ functions.
Could you carry that in your pocket?
It's better to have it out, not tucked, because we're a science of shape. If you have it between two surfaces very tight, it's not the best thing. But you can wear it underneath your t-shirt and nobody will. My husband doesn't like to walk around with a shiny pendant, so he'll normally do that as well. And so the pendant or the ring, you don't need both, just has many shapes that are general support for the body. And what some people will feel, and I think that's why the L90 is important, circling back to that, is some people will feel the effect of removing the pendant. So a lot of people who actually say, oh, I don't feel anything when you take the pendant away. And then after a few days, they'll notice and put it back on. And so that's what we normally recommend. You either start with the pendant or L90. It's and if you just go as well, I mean, this is even more out there, but I'll throw it out anyways. So if you want to look at the specific shapes, there's the book Biogeometry Signatures my father wrote, and you can draw different shapes on your body.
This one here.
Yeah. Exactly.
This one.
Yeah, so this has all of the different shapes in the pendant and explains where they're coming from.
Yep.
That they're energy patterns found within the body.
You've also got this one as well, right? Back, Future to Mankind. Oh, yeah. See that one? Yep. People out there.
So I'll say two things. If it's not, this is going to be even more out there for the listeners. But if you go to our resources page on our website as well, just scroll down all the way to the bottom. There's something that we call a paper emitter. And you can start connecting with these shapes using your photo, because your photo carries your energy quality. And it can be a start. Some people.
This is not that out there for me. This is like prolotherapy. This is what is it called? It's like where you can write the word of an illness and it can put in the, so we can write. It's like the same with Dr. Emoto, putting the words love, heal, peace on the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could do two things. You can cut out, you'll see it's like a paper and it has these shapes and two circles in the middle. You can cut out the circles and just for a few days carry that around, maybe in a loose pocket, see how you feel, or put your follow the instructions as well. Put your photo in there. Just remember to clear it. And that's just a way to just try it without having
the way voodoo works.
I mean, you can.
I'm not mucking around. I was being serious. Like, must be on the same sort of principles.
Well, it's connecting. So whenever we're working with what has the vibration of a person. So we use things like normally what we use is what we call a witness. We just tell you to take a piece of tissue and rub it on your forehead. And that's enough to get some cell samples on there, a little bit of fat on there. But you can use things like saliva, blood, hair, and the photo works as well. So you can use any of that to connect to somebody's energy system. And so we also go into things like then, it's important to understand these witnesses are all over the place, but it's also, there's just, I think, a lot to energy work. I mean, one of the things people don't touch upon is a lot of times we think of how things affect our own energy system, especially when things like voodoo or something like that comes up as a thought. But as a protective mechanism, very few people really follow or digest the concept that it's much easier to protect yourself from outside subtle energy effects than it is to protect yourself from yourself. And so there's a lot of your own emotional, mental energy that we're generating that it in itself will be a protective effect. It's not about just creating a bubble. Mm-hmm. You're within that bubble. Mm-hmm. And there's that aspect too. And then for those interested as well, understanding, I mentioned pendulums, I mentioned things like that. I mean, if they go to the shop and they go to the student tools, they can download the manual. It's also on the resources. They can download the manual for one of the pendulums. Mm-hmm. And just read it and see, without even going into Back to the Future or anything like that. It's a manual that explains one of those, how it works. If you're thinking, hey, it's a piece of, plastic on a string that I'm just moving into different angles. How could that do anything? Read the manual, see if it resonates with you. And if it's something that, as a user, they would be interested in learning more about.
I mean, it makes complete sense, though, because at the end of the day, we are our environment as well. It shows how, it even goes to the point of, I mean, the people you're around. If you're around 5 negative people, you're going to be the sixth. If you're around 5 positive people, you're going to be the sixth, right? It's like, so that's just around the energy you get there. So then if you've got instruments that produce beneficial frequencies or energies, subtle energies. Did you say key energies? I think you said the word was key.
Working with different energy keys, producing that. I mean, we could say just producing the centering quality.
Yeah, centering quality. I mean, that's going to be, so you've got it coming from within, you've got it coming from this in the area. So you're hitting everything from your environment to your internal environment. And that's why, if you want to have holistic health, it's what you need to look at, because we can do everything right. But if you're constantly being just chipped away at every day by something in the environment, eventually it will break you down, no matter what you're doing, unless you've got phenomenal constitution. So if we can clear that and we can continue everything else, it's going to push people into a different.
That's true what you're saying, because also another group of people that come to us a lot is people who work in the subtle energy field and they come home feeling drained. So there's actually a big aspect of how do I take care of yourself first. There's a big aspect of that, of we have to take care of ourselves, because there's a big part of us that when we look at when we understand the concept of resonance, you become a sample of the whole. So in everything that you interact with and all of your work, it's important to not feel drained. Mm-hmm. And it's important to find the way to recenter and connect with this type of energy quality. So that's also part of what we hope that we can help people with.
100%. I mean, I know people that have used these. My friend Warren Williams, I don't know if you know Warren. He's just done. He's a Trek Level 4 practitioner, but he's just done your course, and I'm going to do it myself. And he was just saying, and if you use the cube and you walk into the room, it's like, the energy feels different here. It's and I've heard quite a few people say that as well. So it's not just us. It's been like, you can actually feel the energy being different. And if you're sleeping in that environment, so you're getting 7-8 hours of rest in that environment every evening, that's going to be huge. We always talk about that, even for trying to mitigate certain frequencies. Say, look, if your bedroom's good and turn off your Wi-Fi, all those things, it's going to be hugely different to if you're being bombarded with it 24/7. And if you can get your bedroom and you can wear these things, so if you're going outside, they can help you. Yes. I mean, so because it's touching you, it's actually running that energy through your system.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. I mean, it's even just outside of clothing. It's within your energy field. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's a big aspect of it. I mean, like you mentioned, we don't have any kind of formal marketing or advertising system, and
don't need it.
I think It's exactly like what you said. We say touch wood, or I don't know how you would say it, but that's what we say in Arabic, touch wood. That people, when we place the home kit, people are feeling the effects. People feel calmer, and that's how. I was just talking to, we have like I was saying, the home solutions practitioners, and one of them was saying, how I got started is it's the first step of getting started is difficult, of course. But then she said, once you're in the door and this person, and then somebody comes into the house and they feel it and they ask, what did you do? Somebody else comes in and asks, what did you do? And so that's the aspect that we're seeing. And we're trying to provide even more and more things like plans for houses that people can use, or
that would be that would be great, because it's funny because it's people that think this is all nonsense. It's crazy. You can go back in scriptures, go back into different texts. I think it was Irish monks that went back and picked up rocks from like 50 miles away because of their paramagnetism. They knew about these things. And if you look at talk about fasting, love them or loathe them, every religion has fasting because there's some wisdom in that. So to disregard ancient wisdom, it's just crazy for me, And you talk about that.
Somebody was just telling me about a few years back, they were telling me about a Japanese temple, and they aimed to recreate the temple as is, and they couldn't structurally recreate it to withstand the same weather effects as the original temple. And there was a lot of different sciences or subtle energy aspects that most people aren't aware of. Things like if I'm pulling something outside of the environment, I might want to consider orienting it the same way it was naturally oriented when it was growing. Just different aspects like that we don't think of. And then when it comes to building subtle energy, we also look at the power spots in the ground. How can you work with those? There's a lot there for sure.
Well, yeah, that's why like those temples and things were built in certain places. I'm like guaranteed. And you didn't talk about there like feng shui or the setup of your house. So even the way you get into that, like the way you set up your house, the way you build your house, the way you have certain things, and even the way you have your bedroom, that can make a big difference, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. It's been a great talking to you, Doreya. It's been fantastic. Anything else you want to add for people?
I think we covered a lot. I think.
And so it's biogeomtry.ca or .com.
Yeah, it'll redirect to .ca, so whichever one.
Yep. And for people, if they want to find you, is it basically website, or do you have any Instagram or any YouTube or any channels like that?
I'm not very good. I have Instagram. I'm not very good at using it, but they're more than welcome to just. I think it's probably just Doreya or Doreya Karim. My name is not very common.
No.
Usually, no, it's not. It's not. It's Doreya Karim on Instagram, or if anybody wants to just email info@biogeomtry.com, they can just send an email directly to me and they'll get it to me.
Awesome. Also, Doreya, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, guys, that was Doreya Ibrahim. I'm sure you got a hell of a lot out of that. It's one of the coming across biogeometry as being an absolute game changer, because rather than trying to stop harmful EMFs, we can now harmonize with them, and we can actually turn them into a positive. And the symbols that they sell on the website are actually, not only going to be great for protecting you, but they're actually quite stylish as well. Some really nice pieces there, along with the cube, and I use all of them. And yeah, they're fantastic, especially if you're traveling as well, going on an airplane, don't be affected by radiation. The symbols you can wear around your neck, you can hold them on your body. And also I mentioned before, the cube for your house is fantastic. So head on over to www.biogeomtry.ca for all the information you can there, for courses and also for the products. And I know that won't be the last time we have Doreya on the show. But otherwise, guys, they've got so many more podcasts to actually get out to you. I just had a little bit of trouble with the system over here, but I've got we've got 2 to 3 more just to get out to you that I know you're going to love. So keep your eyes peeled and your ears tuned for them. As always, if you are dealing with a health issue and you are struggling to overcome it and you'd like help to finally put it behind you, then don't hesitate to send me an email at ryan@reviveyourself.ca. .ca. So you're saying that ryan@reviveyourself.co. That's ryan@reviveyourself.co. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, that's it for this week, people. Lots of love. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
If you're struggling with gut issues, such as gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, and want to finally be able to eat the foods you love without the crippling after effects, then don't forget to head over to reviveyourself.co and pick up your free copy of The Healing Health Paradigm today.